In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I made this force field of light in camera with no Photoshop work necessary. So let's take a look at the image a little bit more clearly, and let's zoom in on it here, and you can see we have our lovely model in a sort of android futuristic dress, surrounded by this lovely cyany blue or cyany green force field of light. Now, how was that achieved? Now, a lot of people say to me when they see this image is that, wow, that must have taken a lot of post-production to get that to that level. And I'm going to actually explain to you and show you a lighting diagram of how we achieved that shot and a few clips as well. But first of all, let's go to that question of how much post-production was actually necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run through the image backwards, if you like, in terms of the post-production. So if I turn this layer off here, the first level of post-production from the shot you've seen is that the original image was shot vertically, and then some space has been added out on the left-hand side. And then if we zoom in on this area of the shot, that's a little bit of recoloration work that was done to soup up the color of the force field a little bit, and the contrast on the shot, a little bit of burn and dodge work. This was more color on the actual force field of light with that hue saturation layer there. And then this was the difference between the original raw file and a little bit of liquify on the model and a little bit of cleaning up. So what you're seeing now on this file is the original raw file image. And if we zoom in, you can see my lighting stands, you can see the assistant's footprints on the floor, the markers for the model, you can see our electrical cables trailing through there. You can even see a smudge there of my assistant that was dressed in black that was working the lighting around the model, and a few little marks there as well. So basically that is actually the raw file. That's how it was shot. There's the other lighting stand on the right hand side. You'll see that in a moment when we look at the lighting diagram on how it was shot. And then basically those elements were retouched out. Of course, the floor was cleaned up, a little bit of liquify on the model, and then that was then souped up with a little bit of color, and then finally a little bit more burn and dodge. So essentially our retouch file is like so, and the original file is actually just like that. So not a huge difference. And you can see from that that the actual force field of light was captured entirely in camera. In fact, it was done on an 11-second exposure. So let's take a look at the lighting diagram and a little bit more about how it was achieved. So I'm going to open up the lighting diagram. So we're going to start off here. We've got a grey background, and in this case it was actually a solid wall, like this Infinity Cove type wall behind. In America they call it a cyclorama, but a solid curve into the floor wall. And in this particular shoot, we had that whole cyclorama or Infinity Cove painted grey, including the floor. So those grey lines there represent the fact that the floor was painted grey right up into the curve of the cove. Then we had our model, our subject there, quite some distance away from the background in this case. I think she was probably at least 4 or 5 meters away from the background. Then we had the camera, and then we had a background light, and that was a fluter. Now, fluter is a special Fresnel, large Fresnel lens light that collimates the light and can throw a really nice spot beam, a little bit like a theatre light, but with the ability to zoom the light in and out and change the softness of the edges and the spread of the beam. And that fluter was throwing a glow of light on the wall on the Infinity Cove behind. And if we open up the picture again and we take a look at that, you'll see there is a gentle glow just emanating out behind the model here and behind here and over the top there, and that was afforded by the fluter shining pulsing a flash from the studio lamp head onto the wall. Then we had a strip box light here on the left and a strip box on the right. And again, you can see that in the original picture because you can actually see the studio light stands on wheels there, one either side on the floor. And I used strip lights, and these were a special, very thin strip light made by Broncolor, tall ones that are only about that wide, and I used those to help replicate the look of the lighting that we were going to wrap around the model, which also was originating from a continuous, but this one was a continuous light source that we're putting around the model. The strip lights were flash. So we used the strip light flashlights because they were similar in shaping, if you like, to the continuous light that I'm going to use around the model. So from there onwards, let's take a look at then what happened. So we had a fluorescent light tube that was about that diameter, a sort of standard one, 6 foot long. And I had my assistant dressed completely in black clothes, black shoes, black balaclava, black gloves, so that she would be barely visible in the background of the shot. And as a matter of fact, the little smudge that I pointed out to you on the right-hand side of the shot a little bit earlier was actually just a little bit of her face visible through the balaclava when she was moving around. And then what happened was we started an 11-second exposure. Shutter opens and the model holds her pose completely still. And then during that 11-second exposure, my assistant walks around the model holding the flash tube vertically and swinging it around and swaying it around like so, but then stopping at a given point. And then another assistant unplugged the light tube. It wasn't a flash tube, sorry, a continuous light tube. Unplugged that light tube so that it switched off. And then the flashes from the studio lights fire. And that was the background light on the fluter and the 2 strip lights either side of the model. And then those studio lights freeze the model sharp. And because she's barely moved during the long 11-second exposure with the light tube going around her, she records sharply in the final shot. So it was a combination of a continuous light source on an 11-second exposure, the model holding very still, and the flashes firing to freeze her. And from that resulted in the ability to capture that shot in camera, as you see here, and then with retouching and adding a little bit of room out to the left, results in the final image created there. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching.